Imagine waking up one ordinary morning, walking to your mailbox, and finding a handwritten letter waiting inside. There is no stamp, no return address, no signature. At first, it seems like a prank. Until you begin reading. The writer knows where you've been, who you've spoken to, what you've done, even secrets you've never told another living soul. You stop reading, look around, and suddenly, your quiet little town doesn't feel so safe anymore. Because whoever wrote this letter is watching you. This wasn't fiction. It wasn't the plot of a Hollywood thriller. It happened in a real American town. And nearly 50 years later, no one knows who was behind it. This is the mystery of the Circleville Letters. A town where nothing ever happened. Nestled among the rolling farmland of central Ohio sits a small community called Circleville. In the 1970s, it was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone. Children rode their bicycles through quiet neighborhoods. Neighbors waved from their front porches. People rarely locked their doors. Crime was almost unheard of. It was the sort of town where secrets were difficult to keep, yet everyone believed they knew exactly who they could trust. That illusion would soon be shattered. Because somewhere inside this peaceful community, someone was watching. Watching carefully. Watching silently. Waiting. The first target in the summer of 1976. A local school bus driver named Mary Gillespie opened her mailbox and found an anonymous letter. At first glance, it looked ordinary. Plain paper. Messy handwriting. No signature. But what the letter contained was anything but ordinary. The writer accused Mary of having an affair with the superintendent of schools, Gordon Massey. It wasn't simply an accusation. The author seemed convinced it was true. Even more unsettling, the writer claimed to know intimate details about Mary's private life. Details that very few people should have known. Whoever wrote the letter wasn't guessing. Or at least, they wanted Mary to believe they weren't. At first, she tried to ignore it. Perhaps someone held a grudge. Perhaps it was a cruel joke. If she didn't respond, surely it would stop. But it didn't. The letters multiplied. Days turned into weeks. Then weeks into months. The letters kept arriving. Always anonymous. Always handwritten. Always filled with disturbing claims. Some demanded that Mary confess. Others warned of consequences if she remained silent. But then something even stranger happened. Mary wasn't the only one receiving them. Her husband, Ron Gillespie, began receiving letters too. So did members of their family. Friends. Neighbors. People connected to the local school system. One by one, mailboxes across Circleville began delivering the same terrifying message. Someone knew their secrets. Or at least, wanted them to believe they did. The quiet town that had always felt so familiar was slowly becoming a place filled with suspicion. Someone was always watching. The letters didn't just accuse people. They described routines, travel routes, conversations, daily habits. The writer seemed to know who left home early, who returned late, and where people had been throughout the day. Some residents began looking over their shoulders. Others wondered if their phones were being watched. Was someone following them? Was it a neighbor? A coworker? A friend? Or someone they greeted every single day, without ever realizing the danger? In a town where everyone knew everyone, suspicion spread faster than the letters themselves. Because if the writer truly knew these things, they had to be close. Very close. Ron makes a decision for months. Ron Gillespie tried to protect his wife. He ignored the letters. He dismissed them. He hoped whoever was responsible would eventually lose interest. But the messages only became more aggressive, more personal, more threatening. Eventually, Ron told his family something that would later become one of the most chilling moments in the entire case. He believed he knew who was sending the letters. One evening, after receiving yet another threatening message, Ron quietly picked up his handgun, got into his truck, and drove away. He told his family he was going to confront the person responsible. It would be the last time they ever saw him alive. Only a few hours later, Ron Gillespie's truck crashed into a tree on a lonely stretch of road. Authorities ruled it an accident. But almost immediately, questions began to emerge. Questions that have never been fully answered. Where had Ron been going? Who had he intended to confront? And why, after his death, did the anonymous letters continue, as if nothing had happened? The mystery was only just beginning. Officially, Ron Gillespie's death was ruled an accident. Investigators concluded that his pickup truck had simply left the road before crashing into a tree. But to many people in Circleville, something didn't feel right. Ron wasn't known as a reckless driver. He had left home with a clear purpose. He believed he was finally going to confront the mysterious letter writer. Yet before anyone knew who he had gone to meet, he was dead. Even stranger, when authorities examined the scene, they discovered Ron had been drinking. That immediately shifted the investigation. The case was quickly closed. But for Mary's family, the questions never disappeared. Had Ron really lost control of the truck? Or had someone made sure he never returned home? No one could say for certain. But what happened next made the mystery even darker. Because whoever had been writing the letters didn't stop. The letters continue. Most people assumed that after Ron's death, the letters would finally end. Instead, they became even more aggressive. Mary continued receiving anonymous messages. So did her relatives, friends, neighbors. Even people only loosely connected to the family began finding disturbing envelopes inside their mailboxes. The writer seemed untouched by Ron's death. Almost as if they had expected it. Some letters mocked the investigation. Others suggested the writer knew far more than the police did. Every new envelope reminded the town of one terrifying fact. Whoever was responsible was still out there. Secrets no stranger should know. What made the letters so unsettling wasn't simply the accusations. It was the detail. The anonymous writer appeared to know where people had been, who they had met, conversations that had taken place behind closed doors, personal information that seemed impossible for an outsider to obtain. Some residents began wondering if their homes were being watched. Others questioned lifelong friendships. Could the writer be a neighbor, a coworker, a family member? Perhaps someone at church? The list of suspects grew longer every week. Trust, the very thing that held Circleville together, was slowly disappearing. Fear takes over the town. Before long, checking the mailbox became something many people dreaded. Every unfamiliar envelope brought a wave of anxiety. Parents warned their children not to talk to strangers. Neighbors became suspicious of one another. Simple conversations were suddenly viewed differently. Was someone asking innocent questions, or gathering information for another letter? In a town of only a few thousand people, rumors spread faster than facts. and the anonymous writer seemed to know exactly how to fuel them. Without ever revealing their identity, they had managed to divide an entire community. Then the threats left the mailbox. Until now, the letters had remained private, hidden inside sealed envelopes. But suddenly, everything changed. One morning, large homemade signs began appearing around Circleville. Nailed to fences, attached to utility poles, placed along roadsides. They contained the very same accusations that had appeared inside the anonymous letters. Only now, everyone could read them. Drivers slowed down. Children pointed. Neighbors whispered. Private allegations had become public humiliation. For Mary, there was nowhere left to hide. Someone wanted the entire town to believe the accusations, and they were willing to display them for everyone to see. A dangerous discovery then, one ordinary afternoon. Mary spotted one of the signs while driving her school bus route. It was positioned where dozens of children could easily read it. Furious, she decided she'd had enough. She pulled over, walked toward the sign, and tore it down. As she pulled it from the post, she noticed something unusual. The sign wasn't attached by ordinary wire. It was connected to a small box hidden behind the post. Curious, Mary looked closer. What she discovered left investigators stunned. It wasn't simply a sign. It was a carefully constructed trap. Whoever had placed it there had attached a handgun. The weapon had been rigged with a string. If someone had attempted to remove the sign without noticing, the gun could have fired directly at them. The anonymous letter writer had crossed a terrifying line. This was no longer intimidation. Someone had built what appeared to be a deadly booby trap. And for the first time, police believed they might finally have real evidence. Investigators carefully dismantled the device. As they examined the weapon, they discovered something unexpected. The serial number led them to one man, a man who claimed he knew nothing about the trap. A man whose arrest would seem to solve the mystery, yet somehow make it even more impossible to explain. His name was Paul Freshour. And from that moment on, the Circleville Letters became one of America's most baffling unsolved mysteries. The investigation finally has a name when investigators traced the serial number on the booby-trapped handgun. It led them to a familiar face. Paul Freshour. Paul wasn't a stranger passing through town. He was a local resident. Even more surprising, he was Mary's brother-in-law. Almost overnight, the investigation took a dramatic turn. For years, police had searched for an invisible enemy. Now, they believed they had found him. Paul insisted he was innocent. He admitted the gun had once belonged to him, but claimed it had disappeared long before it was found attached to the roadside trap. According to Paul, someone else must have taken it. Investigators weren't convinced. To them, the discovery of the handgun was too significant to ignore. After years of anonymous threats, they finally had a suspect. In 1983, Paul Freshour stood trial. Prosecutors argued that he had spent years terrorizing Mary Gillespie, sending hundreds of anonymous letters, before escalating to a deadly booby trap. To many observers, the evidence seemed compelling. The weapon traced back to him. The feud involved members of his own extended family. And investigators believed they had finally connected all the pieces. But the defense painted a very different picture. Paul denied writing the letters. He denied building the trap. He denied threatening anyone. And throughout the trial, he repeatedly asked the same question. If I was responsible, where is the proof? There were no fingerprints connecting him to the letters. No eyewitnesses. No confession. No direct evidence showing he had actually written a single anonymous message. Yet despite those unanswered questions, the jury found him guilty. Paul Freshour was sentenced to prison. For many people in Circleville, the nightmare appeared to be over. The anonymous letter writer had finally been caught. Or so everyone believed. Then the impossible happened. Only weeks after Paul entered prison, new anonymous letters began arriving. At first, people assumed they were old letters that had simply been delayed. But they kept coming. Days became weeks. Weeks became months. The handwriting looked familiar. The tone was unmistakable. The writer still seemed to know intimate details about people's lives. If Paul was sitting inside a prison cell, who was writing the letters? The case that had seemed solved suddenly made even less sense than before. Some investigators suggested Paul had arranged for someone else to continue his campaign. Others believed a copycat had emerged. But neither explanation answered every question. Because whoever was writing these new letters appeared to possess the same knowledge, the same style, and the same obsession as before. A letter sent from inside the prison? Then came one of the strangest moments in the entire mystery. While Paul remained behind bars, he reportedly received an anonymous letter himself. The message mocked him. It implied that the real writer was still free. And then came a chilling line. Now when are you going to believe you aren't going to get out of there? If authentic, the letter suggested something extraordinary. Either someone wanted Paul to believe he had been framed, or the true author had been watching the investigation all along. Even today, people continue debating whether that letter was genuine. But if it was, it completely changes the story. Because it means the anonymous writer wasn't trying to protect Paul. They were taunting him. Experts examined the anonymous letters. Handwriting analysts offered opinions. Some believed similarities existed. Others disagreed. Like so much else in the Circleville case, the evidence never produced a clear answer. Different investigators reached different conclusions. Different experts saw different patterns. Nothing was ever definitive. The one thing everyone agreed on was that the mystery refused to disappear. Prison couldn't stop the fear even with Paul imprisoned. Circleville never truly felt safe again. People still glanced nervously at their mailboxes. Rumors continued spreading through town. Neighbors questioned one another. The letters had done something that couldn't easily be undone. They had destroyed trust. In a community where everyone once believed they knew one another, anyone could now be the anonymous writer. The mystery had become larger than one suspect. It had become part of Circleville itself. For decades, journalists, detectives, handwriting experts, and amateur investigators have all asked the same question. Did police arrest the wrong man? Or was Paul somehow orchestrating everything from behind prison walls? Then, years later, new evidence, forgotten documents, and disturbing theories would reignite the mystery all over again. Because even after nearly 50 years, one question still refuses to go away. Who really wrote the Circleville letters? Most unsolved mysteries slowly fade with time. Witnesses move away. Evidence disappears. Memories become unreliable. Eventually, people stop asking questions. The Circleville letters did the opposite. Years after the investigation, journalists continued searching for answers. Books were written. Television documentaries revisited the case. Internet forums filled with amateur detectives comparing handwriting samples, police reports, and forgotten newspaper articles. Yet despite decades of investigation, no single explanation has ever satisfied everyone. Because every theory solves one mystery, while creating another. Theory 1. Paul Freshour was guilty for many people. The simplest explanation remains the most convincing. The gun used in the roadside booby trap belonged to Paul Freshour. He had connections to the people receiving the letters. Investigators believed he had both motive and opportunity. A jury listened to weeks of testimony, examined the evidence, and ultimately found him guilty. To those who accept the court's decision, the case is already solved. Perhaps the continued letters were written by an accomplice. Or perhaps copycats simply wanted to keep the legend alive. It wouldn't be the first time a famous criminal case inspired imitators. But not everyone believes the evidence was that straightforward. Theory 2. The wrong man went to prison. Others believe Paul Freshour became the perfect suspect. The gun connected him to the crime. But critics argue that the rest of the evidence was surprisingly thin. No fingerprints. No confession. No witness who actually saw him writing the letters. And perhaps most importantly, the anonymous messages continued even while Paul remained behind bars. Supporters insist this raises an obvious question. If prison couldn't stop the letters, was Paul ever the writer at all? Even today, many researchers believe the investigation focused too narrowly on one suspect, while overlooking other possibilities. Theory 3. More than one writer. Perhaps the biggest question isn't who wrote the letters, but whether there was only one writer to begin with. Some investigators have suggested that multiple people may have been involved. One person could have started the campaign. Another could have continued it. Or perhaps several individuals shared information, allowing the letters to continue for years without revealing a single identity. It would explain how the writers seemed to know so many private details about different families. It would also explain why the mystery became increasingly difficult to solve. Because investigators may never have been searching for one person. They may have been searching for several. Today, Circleville looks much like any other small American town. Children still ride bicycles through quiet neighborhoods. Neighbors still wave as they pass each other on the street. Visitors driving through would never suspect that one of America's strangest unsolved mysteries unfolded here. But for those who lived through it, the memory never completely disappeared. Some still remember the fear of opening the mailbox. Others remember friendships that ended because of suspicion. Families were divided. Reputations were destroyed. Lives changed forever. Not by violence alone, but by words written on ordinary sheets of paper. Why the mystery still fascinates us. Perhaps the Circleville letters continue to captivate us because the mystery feels so personal. Most unsolved crimes involve strangers. This one involved neighbors, friends, family. Someone who blended perfectly into everyday life. Someone who may have smiled at the very people they secretly terrorized. The writer didn't need a mask. Or a weapon. At least, not in the beginning. They used something far more unsettling. Knowledge. Because nothing is more frightening than realizing someone knows your secrets, while you know absolutely nothing about them. Nearly 50 years have passed. Yet the Circleville letters remain one of America's most disturbing unsolved mysteries. Hundreds of letters. Countless accusations. A mysterious death. A deadly roadside trap. A prison sentence. And questions that still refuse to disappear. Perhaps the truth is buried somewhere inside forgotten police files. Perhaps the real writer died without ever confessing. Or perhaps, someone reading this story today knows more than they've ever admitted. Until undeniable evidence finally emerges, Circleville Letters will remain exactly what they have always been. A mystery. One that transformed an ordinary American town into the setting of one of history's most unsettling unsolved cases. And perhaps, that's the most frightening part of all. Because the person behind those letters could have been anyone. If you enjoyed uncovering this mystery, subscribe to Hidden Archive. Every week, we explore real mysteries, forgotten histories, and unexplained events that continue to puzzle the world. Because sometimes, the greatest mysteries aren't hidden in ancient ruins or lost civilizations. Sometimes, they arrive quietly, inside an ordinary mailbox.